Ladies and gentlemen, your head table for the AUSA George Catlett Marshall Memorial Dinner. Command Sergeant Major Douglas Gibbons, United States Army retired, AUSA 2nd Region President. Chris McBride, AUSA 3rd Region President. Gus Rodriguez, AUSA 4th Region President. Doug Stewart, AUSA 5th Region President. Colonel Phil Stage, United States Army retired, AUSA 6th Region President. Colonel Sam Thiessen, United States Army retired, AUSA 7th Region President. Eric Lean, AUSA European Region President. Colonel Benjamin Lukfar, United States Army retired, AUSA Pacific Region President. Chaplain Major General Paul Hurley, Chief of Chaplains, United States Army. Sergeant Major of the Army Jack Tilley, United States Army retired, AUSA Vice Chairman for Non-Commissioned Officer and Soldier Programs. Philip Sakowitz Jr., AUSA Vice Chairman for Civilian Affairs. Lieutenant General David Oley, United States Army retired, AUSA Vice Chairman for Retiree and Veteran Affairs. Command Sergeant Major Stephen England, United States Army retired, AUSA Council of Trustees. Richard Edwards, AUSA Council of Trustees. Major General Patricia Hickerson, United States Army retired, AUSA Council of Trustees. Lieutenant General Larry Jordan, United States Army retired, AUSA Council of Trustees. John Harris II, AUSA Council of Trustees. William M. Brown, AUSA Council of Trustees. Leanne Currett, AUSA Council of Trustees. Thomas Arsenault, AUSA Council of Trustees. Sergeant Major of the Army, Daniel Daly. General Ann Dunwoody, United States Army retired, AUSA Council of Trustees. General Dennis Reimer, 33rd Chief of Staff of the Army, United States Army retired, AUSA Council of Trustees. General Carl Vorno, 31st Chief of Staff of the Army, United States Army retired, AUSA Council of Trustees. Thomas Rabeau, Deputy Chairman, AUSA Council of Trustees. General Mark Milley, the 39th Chief of Staff of the Army. The Honorable Ryan D. McCarthy, Acting Secretary of the Army. Your host, Phoebe Novakovic, Chairman, AUSA Council of Trustees. Your Master of Ceremonies, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Association of the United States Army, General Carter Ham, United States Army, retired. And ladies and gentlemen, the 2017 awardee of the George Catlett Marshall Medal and our guest of honor, Mr. Gary Sinise. Ladies and gentlemen, your 2017 Marshall Dinner Head Tables.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Carter Ham, and I'm a soldier for life. I apologize for my voice. I was at the Mark Wills concert last night. Kind of took a little bit out of me. So come next year. Welcome to the 2017 General George C. Marshall Memorial Dinner. Please remain standing as we welcome the colors that have presented the singing of the national anthem and the blessing this evening by the Army's Chief of Chaplains, Chaplain Major General Paul Hurley.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free
Let us pray. Almighty God, source of all that is good, source of all that is true, source of life itself, be present here in this place with these your people. We begin tonight in thanksgiving for this time, this fellowship, and this feast. May all these blessings become a source of courage that will transform our world, of wisdom that will discern the needs of our people, of our nation, of vision to see beyond all the challenges and obstacles. Bless this evening, this place. Be inspiration and strength for these selfless servants of our nation, for sustained, ready, and unyielding service to liberty and peace for our grateful nation. Amen.
Please be seated. Thanks, Father Hurley. For that, I will confess I thought you might throw in an extra prayer for the mournful Red Sox fans. Though I have Secretary McCarthy and Mr. Sinise, sad to report to you, but happy for many of us, the Nats are up 5-0 in the 8th. AUSA Sunshine Chapter, where you at? Flamingo socks, just for you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your dinner. We'll be back shortly. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, okay, here we go. All right, so a quick update. Some of you probably know, in Chicago, final score, Washington Nationals 5, Chicago Cubs 0. And some really sad news, Yankees are up 1-0 against the Indians in the first. Very, very sad, very sad. Before we begin with the official portion, let me introduce some of the key and great folks who have joined us this evening. At the top of the list, someone most of you know, Medal of Honor recipient, Master Sergeant Leroy Petrie. We're pleased this evening to have the Army's most senior leadership, the Acting Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, the Chief of Staff, the 39th Chief of Staff of the Army, General Mark Milley, and the Sergeant Major of the Army, Dan Daly. Welcome, gentlemen. We're glad to have you. Now, I got to tell you one thing, as some of you know and some of you don't. Earlier this week, Sergeant Major of the Army Daly recognized the Army's NCO of the Year and Soldier of the Year. And this year particularly, I think, is most appropriate. The NCO of the Year for the United States Army is Staff Sergeant Ryan McCarthy. If you can believe that. Where are you, Sergeant McCarthy? There he is, right there. All right, and if you think that the Secretary of the Army and the NCO of the Army of the Year for the Army having the same name, maybe that's coincidence, maybe not. The Soldier of the Year for 2017 is Specialist Hazen Ham. Come on, come on. Well done, gentlemen. You represent and have earned excellence. We're really proud of you. Well done. Good. We're honored this evening to have several former secretaries of the Army having joined us this evening. The Honorable Louis Caldera, the Honorable John McHugh, the Honorable Togo West, two former acting secretaries of the Army, Bob Spear and Patrick Murphy. Gentlemen, please. We have two former recipients of the George C. Marshall Medal, Lieutenant General retired Julius Becton and General retired Gordon Sullivan. Gentlemen. Several former Chiefs of Staff, the 31st Chief of Staff of the Army, General Carl Vano, the 32nd Chief of Staff of the Army, General Gordon Sullivan, the 33rd Chief of Staff of the Army, General Dennis Reimer, the 34th Chief of Staff of the Army, General Eric Shinseki, and the 36th Chief of Staff of the Army, General George Casey. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much. We have a number of former Sergeants Major of the Army. The 11th Sergeant Major of the Army, Sergeant Major of the Army, Jack Tilley. The 12th Sergeant Major of the Army, Sergeant Major of the Army, Ken Preston. And the 13th Sergeant Major of the Army, Sergeant Major Ray Chandler. I'd like especially this evening to thank the Military District of Washington, Major General Mike Howard and Command Sergeant Major Biggs for all that you have done to make this week so special. If you were at the Monday morning opening ceremony, those were their soldiers that made that powerful presentation. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much. None of this is possible without support from the Office of the Chief of Public Affairs, Brigadier General Omar Jones, Ms. Elaine Conway, and Mr. Brian Mays. Thank you very, very much. The Army Secretariat and the Army staff have been fully engaged. A special thanks to SMA Daly and to the hardest working man of staff, the Director of the Army Staff, Lieutenant General Gary Cheek. Thank you. We're assembled here this evening in our nation's capital, united in our love of country and united in our love of soldiers. We take inspiration from the high qualities of statesmanship and leadership that are present in the thoughts and actions of General of the Army George C. Marshall, to whose enduring memory this dinner is dedicated. As we look at some of the distinguished Americans who have received the Marshall Medal, we're encouraged by their example. Presidents Dwight Eisenhower, George Herbert Walker Bush, Secretaries of State Powell and Albright, Secretaries of Defense Gates and Panetta, Generals Scowcroft, Becton, Sullivan, noble citizens Tom Brokaw, Mike Krzyzewski. Our awardee this year is a unique individual who unselfishly dedicates his time, his talent, and his energy to enhancing the lives of America's soldiers, veterans, and their families. He is seemingly everywhere when veterans need help. His physical presence and personal touch demonstrate unwavering dedication and a tremendous desire to serve. It is my distinct privilege and honor this evening to present to you the Association of the United States Army's 2017 General George C. Marshall Medal recipient, Mr. Gary Sinise.
Would Mr. Sinise and Ms. Novakovic please join General Ham at the podium? We honor Gary Sinise, a native of Blue Island, Illinois, who became a beloved part of Army lore when he took a role in a 1993 movie about a box of chocolates. Cast as Lieutenant Dan Taylor in the Oscar-winning movie Forrest Gump, he had a memorable role as an American soldier who loses his legs in combat and is saved from bleeding to death by the star Tom Hanks. Lieutenant Dan became an iconic figure for a generation of veterans and moviegoers for his portrayal of a soldier traumatized by the loss of limbs, who in the end finds a path to recovery and peace. With Vietnam veterans in his and his wife's family, he already felt a closeness to veterans. He'd hosted veterans dinners and free performances at Steppenwolf Theater, which he co-founded in Chicago in 1974. And he helped veterans also find work as writers and actors. He went on to do many more things for soldiers, veterans, first responders, wounded warriors, and families, because being Lieutenant Dan made him popular in military circles, and because he believed in helping. He adopted the Lieutenant Dan band name for his musical group that in 2003 started making appearances in the United States and overseas to entertain troops and to raise money and support for current and former service members, especially wounded warriors and Gold Star families. His humanitarian efforts grew as he established the Gary Sinise Foundation, aimed at respecting and helping those who have served our nation. He continues to provide free monthly dinners and theater performances for veterans in Chicago and Los Angeles. Gary Sinise has won an Emmy, an Obie, a Cable Ace Award, and a Golden Globe. He has a Spirit of Hope Award from the Defense Department, a Sylvanus Thayer Award from the United States Military Academy, a Doughboy Award from the U.S. Army Infantry, and a Presidential Citizens Medal awarded in 2008 by President George W. Bush. One award he does not have, not yet, is the George Catlett Marshall Medal from the Association of the United States Army. This is our highest award, given for selfless service to the United States of America. It isn't given for one performance or two or even three, but for extraordinary and distinguished service to our nation. It is with great respect for his unwavering commitment and steadfast advocacy for the men and women of the Army, their families, friends, and nation that we bestow the 2017 George Catlett Marshall Medal on a great American, Gary Sinise.
Holy cow. Oh, that was a... Couldn't this been a little bigger, General? A few more folks. Gosh, I'm so humbled to be here. Thank you, General Ham, for your kind introduction. I remember when you called me and you asked me to come. I was very touched by it, and I appreciate it so much. General Marshall was an extraordinary American, and I'm deeply moved to receive this honor in his name. Frankly, it's hard for me to imagine myself deserving of such a tribute, as there are so many who inspire and motivate me each day by their courage and selflessness. But it is my hope that by shining a light on me tonight, we continue to help raise a deeper awareness for the many sacrifices that our military and our military families continue to make each day in our nation's defense. I have many friends here tonight, and I thank you all for coming, so thank you. I must say that the mission I'm involved in now, supporting our first responders, veterans, and military families, has its roots in three places. The devastating attack on our country with lives lost in New York, Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania, on September 11, 2001, was a significant and life-altering moment for me with regards to taking veteran support to a new level of action. So that is one. I've also been asked many times if my support of veterans began in the 90s because of my role as U.S. Army soldier and Vietnam veteran Lieutenant Dan Taylor in Forrest Gump. Did anyone see the film? Is there anyone here who didn't see the film? Everyone saw the movie. It's amazing how that movie touched so many folks over the years. And while playing Lieutenant Dan was certainly a key moment, as it led me to a long association with the Disabled American Veterans Organization and supporting our wounded, the first seeds were planted long before, close to home, beginning with the veterans on both my side and my wife's side of our families. I've been inspired by so many who have touched my life over the years, beginning with these family members. And as this is the important annual meeting and exposition for the AUSA, I thought I'd speak a little of some of the family members who served in the U.S. Army and who, by their service, taught me so much. I grew up in Chicago, a Cubs fan, and so we do have some Cubs fans here. Very good. We'll get it back. And I was surrounded by veterans. So, 1960. 5 years old here. I'm ready to go. An uncle serving in Japan came home on leave and brought me this uniform, and he gave it to me for my 5th birthday. I think I wore it for about a week before my mother finally tore it off me. The little Lieutenant Dan up there, and there he is. But to the real service members in the family, my grandfather Daniel Sinise, pictured here 100 years ago, at 17 years old, he served in the Army in World War I as an ambulance driver on the front lines in France during the Battle of the Argonne Forest, one of the deadliest battles in our nation's history, with over 26,000 killed. Driving an ambulance was a dangerous duty during this battle, and he would barely survive a few deadly attacks as the Germans would specifically target the ambulances once destroying the ambulances directly in front of and directly behind my grandfather's. While both my uncles served in World War II, it was my Uncle Jack Sinise who served in the Army Air Corps, flying 30 bombing missions over Europe as a navigator on a B-17 Flying Fortress. Nearly shot down twice, once barely making it back across the English Channel with only one engine remaining, I learned much from my Uncle Jack about World War II. Uncle Jack and I were very close and spent much time together before he passed away at 90 years old, October of 2014. Now, my Uncle Jack's death was a catalyst for me to initiate my foundation's Soaring Valor program in partnership with the National World War II Museum in New Orleans and American Airlines, where we take World War II veterans to the extraordinary museum built in their honor and record their oral histories on video for the museum archive. I've had the privilege to travel with many great Americans who fought that war, and my Uncle Jack is most definitely a part of it in spirit. My Uncle Jerry served in World War II, and he was in the Navy. My father, Robert, served in the Navy during the Korean War. But let's get back to the Army, right? That's why we're here. My wife's side of the family, her sister, Amy Treese Whitaker, served in the U.S. Army during the Cold War, having gone through ROTC in college. She served in Germany and elsewhere. During her tour in Germany, she served as a protocol officer, riding trains between East and West Berlin. She left the service as a captain, honorably discharged after serving 10 years. But not before she met and married Vietnam veteran Jack Treese. A recipient of the Bronze Star and 2 Purple Hearts, Jack survived many battles with the 101st, serving as a combat medic in Vietnam. My brother-in-law stayed in the Army for 22 years, meeting Amy at Fort Stewart in the early 80s. And Jack would travel with me to Afghanistan in 2006, twice to Iraq in 2007 and 2008. He was like a brother to me. Sadly, like my Uncle Jack Sinise, he also died in October of 2014, passing away after a battle of cancer. Jack and Amy's son, Gavin Treese, is currently serving in the Army. Having completed 2 deployments to Afghanistan in the infantry. When Jack was diagnosed with cancer, while serving at Fort Lewis, Gavin requested recruiter school with a special request that once completed, he be assigned to an office in Simi Valley, California, so he could be near his father during his final days of life. The Army granted that request, and Gavin was able to be there at the end. He is currently finishing his duties as a recruiter. And finally, my wife's 2 brothers also served in the U.S. Army, both in Vietnam. The youngest of the 2, Arthur Harris, was a skilled combat helicopter pilot. In 1970, while training at Fort Walter in Texas, at one point during a mechanical failure in the helicopter, trying to avoid hitting a populated area, he barely survived crashing the helo into a heavily wooded area on base. His skills would serve him well as he logged over 800 combat hours in Vietnam. He would come home and continue to serve as a helicopter pilot with the Illinois National Guard. And the eldest brother, Boyd McCanna Mac Harris, a West Point graduate, class of '66, served 2 tours in Vietnam, once as a lieutenant, a platoon leader, and then again as a captain, a company commander. During his time in country, pictured here, he received the Silver Star for gallantry in action, one of the many awards presented to him during his outstanding career. In 1975, back at West Point, he was promoted to major and served there as a tactical officer until 1977. I've met many great leaders currently serving in high command that served under Mac during those years, and they all speak of him with great admiration, appreciation, and respect. He taught behavioral sciences and leadership from '77 to '78. He attended Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. As a student, and upon graduation in June of 1981, because of his extensive knowledge, experience, and Army-wide reputation as the authority on creative leadership, he was selected to head the Center of Leadership and Ethics at Fort Leavenworth. In the early '80s, I remember learning that Mac, now a lieutenant colonel, had begun work as the project officer and author of the United States Army Manual on Leadership, FM 22-100. This was an 18-month effort that resulted in a manual that represented a positive philosophy of leadership and became widely used as standard doctrine throughout the entire United States Army. It was published 34 years ago this month, in October 1983, the same month that sadly Mac's promising career was cut short as he would pass away from cancer at age 39. For his exceptional work on FM 22-100, he would receive the Legion of Merit Medal. I always remember, what does a leader need to be, know, and do? This principle was conceived and authored by my brother-in-law, Boyd Mac Harris. His dear friend, a lieutenant colonel at the time and fellow Vietnam veteran Herbert J. Lloyd, gave the eulogy at Mac's funeral, and he wrote, "Mac will continue to live in us all who knew him. As we read his leadership manual, his influence will be felt for decades to come." It seems that Herb Lloyd could not have been more correct, as 33 years after his death, in May of 2016, along with Lieutenant General Hal Moore, Mac was inducted into the Fort Leavenworth Hall of Fame. I'm proud to say that at both Fort Leavenworth and at West Point, Excellence in Leadership Awards are presented in his name annually to an outstanding student leader. It is certainly a tremendous achievement, and our family is so proud that Mac is forever linked to both these esteemed colleges in such a prestigious way. As he loved horses, a building at the Hunt Club at Fort Leavenworth was dedicated to him in 1985. And in the summer of 2014, we had the great pleasure and privilege of dedicating a suite at the Thayer Hotel at West Point in Mac's honor, a true blessing, as he loved West Point so dearly. duty, honor, country. Lieutenant Colonel Boyd McKenna Harris lived a life of service to others. I was inspired by him and learned much from him in the short time that I knew him. And I remember the first time I met Mac. I was dating his sister. And I was a theater kid, so I was like really raggy with the hair out to here and the torn jeans and the t-shirt and everything. And in walked West Pointer Mac Harris. And he introduced himself and he said, "Gary, what are your goals?" And I wasn't sure how to answer that because I wasn't sure if he was talking about in life or with his sister. So I just wasn't sure. But he made an impression on me and forever altered the way I think about leadership in our military and our Vietnam veterans. America's families defend us all, and I am proud to include these family members among them. Inspiration and mentoring are so important in our life's journey. We can all point to men and women throughout our lives that we have learned from and who, by their example, have inspired us to be better people. I can truly say that over the years, the veterans and active duty service members that I have known have become that for me, and I will be forever grateful. There is a healing power in service work. And as my heart was broken after that terrible day of September 11, 2001, as fear crept in as to what the future would hold for our country, for my family, I needed to do something to help assuage that fear, to help heal that broken heart, and to stand behind our country. And so I began to take action and employed my efforts toward serving those who would answer our nation's call in response to Osama bin Laden's attack. And what can an actor do? I volunteered for the USO. Thank God for the USO. On my very first trip to Iraq in June of 2003, I met a man sitting on a C-130. We sat down next to each other. His name is John Vigiano, a former Marine and retired New York City firefighter who lost both his sons at the World Trade Center. 2 sons. One a police officer, the other a firefighter, who laid down their lives that day trying to save others. John and I became great friends, and he would introduce me to many members of the FDNY who were there on that terrible day, all who lost friends and loved ones. I count many of them as some of my closest friends. I am grateful for these pals, and they continue each day to serve above self in memory of their fallen first responders. They have inspired me with their selfless service to help those in need, especially those wounded in battle in Iraq and Afghanistan. It is clear that after the attacks of September 11th, there are those who saw the challenge our country faced and surely wanted to take action and show to our defenders how much they care. I know that was the case for me. Supporting many great military charities, traveling to visit our troops at home and abroad, performing with the Lieutenant Dan Band to boost morale and deliver a message of appreciation, that became another way to serve. After we began deploying our troops to Afghanistan and Iraq, it was important to me that everyone responding to the 9/11 attacks knew and understood that there was a grateful America out there backing them up. Having Vietnam veterans in my family, I remember all too well what it was like for them when they returned home to a divided nation. A nation that had turned its back. I wanted to try to do all I could to ensure that our troops today knew that you were appreciated. It was in the late 70s and into the early 80s that I began to receive an education from the Vietnam veteran side of our family as to how bravely they fought and how they felt at the way they were treated when they returned home. Our country was divided over the war and had turned its back on the returning warrior. It was a difficult period in our nation's history, as many Vietnam veterans would disappear into the shadows. So after meeting the veterans on my wife's side of the family and other Vietnam veterans, in the mid-'80s, I began supporting local Vietnam veterans groups in Chicago, and over the years have tried to do my best to welcome them home, as our country had neglected to do that at the conclusion of that war. So I'd like to ask if there are Vietnam veterans here, please stand up so we can let you know how much we appreciate you. God bless you, and thank you for serving our country. Welcome home. Welcome home. Along with my family members, I have many friends who served in Vietnam, and I thank them all. A dozen years later, in the mid-'90s, it was an honor to play Vietnam veteran Lieutenant Dan Taylor, which led to a long association with the Disabled American Veterans Organization. And over these many years, I've met countless numbers of real-life Lieutenant Dans, injured in military service, and I have been inspired by so many of them, inspired by their determination and their perseverance to push on and to never quit. Some of them are here tonight, and I thank them all for showing me what true courage really means. Learning much along the way, and with a full acceptance that this service work was a passionate and important part of my life, in 2011, I decided to bring all these endeavors to serve our veterans together under one umbrella, and I created the Gary Sinise Foundation. All right. I often cite a powerful quote from the 30th President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge, that speaks volumes when he said, "The nation which forgets its defenders will itself be forgotten." The nation which forgets its defenders will itself be forgotten. Ladies and gentlemen, I know where my freedom comes from, and I will not forget our nation's defenders. I will not forget the sacrifices of millions of Gold Star families, the mothers and fathers, the brothers and sisters, the sons and daughters, the children who have given so much throughout our history to keep us free. I thank God each day for them. I will not forget the sacrifices of our wounded and the caregivers who devote their lives to assisting them. I will not forget our first responders who work to keep our cities safe in this dangerous and unpredictable world. While we can never do enough to show our appreciation, to serve and honor our nation's defenders, we can continue to try to do a little more each day so that you always know that we have your back. I'm a grateful American who loves his country and appreciates those who defend it. And for all of you here tonight who have served or are currently serving in freedom's defense, for those deployed around the world and for those in harm's way, at this moment, I say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As long as I'm able, I will continue to stand with you in whatever way I can. I'm honored to be here tonight to accept this award and share it with all those great Americans who have inspired me along the way to be a better man, not the least of which is my beloved wife, Moira, and my family. And my family. Two of my kids are here, Ella and Mac, and I thank you for being here, and thank you for all the support over the years. Welcome to our family, Cam. God bless you all, and may God continue to bless our America and always watch over our nation's defenders wherever they may be. Thank you very much, everyone.
I think they want you back up here. Thanks, Gary. Thank you very much. I think that the story of your family reflects the story of many of the families represented in this room, and it reminds us that the story of this Army, the story of your Army, is the story of America. And you've reminded us of that. Thank you very, very much. All right, so lest we get too serious tonight, how about welcoming the United States Army Band Downrange under the direction of Sergeant Major Crystal Reams. Downrange.
I always like to say we can never do enough to support our defenders and their families and our first responders, our wounded, our Gold Star families, the men and women who sacrifice each day to keep us free. We can never do enough, but we can always try to do a little bit more. That's what we're doing at the Gary Sinise Foundation. That's what everybody's doing here, all the volunteers, just trying to do a little bit more to show you that we love you. And we appreciate you, and we thank you for serving our country, and we won't ever forget you.
Gary Sinise and the Lieutenant Dan Band, they are phenomenal. The foundation, and particularly Mr. Sinise, has been a great thing for the military. He's gone to places where few people have gone, and it's just been a great supporter, active duty, veterans, reserve, guard.
The concerts affect the service members in a positive way by increasing the morale of the base and giving them something to take their mind off of whatever's going on for that one brief moment in time.
And it's actually great when we see those, particularly somebody of his stature, that is willing to take the time and effort to come down and appreciate what those of us in uniform do. Thank you for bringing the awareness.
Really appreciate everything that you've done for us.
Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trust in faith and trust in me. I am your son, I am your daughter. Stand for freedom and for honor. I crave my love as pure. I'd sacrifice my life for yours. Travel all around the world, but home is still my favorite word. I'm here so you don't have to be. The sound of music makes me wild. The thought of loved ones makes me smile. You can't take that away from me. Don't stay faithful, have me. So all I ask is please pray for me, 'cause I am your son, I am your daughter. Stand for freedom and for honor. And I am brave, my love is pure. I sacrifice my life for yours. I would stand against a wall of steel, fight for what I believe. I might not live to watch my children grow, but I died just to keep them safe, free. to the red, the white and blues. I am your son, I am your daughter, and I stand for freedom and for honor. Now I am brave, my love has flown. I'd sacrifice my life for yours, 'cause I am a soldier. I am a soldier. I am a soldier. I am a soldier.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? You ready to have a good time? Hey, feel free to move around, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be scared. Hey, I don't know what's gonna happen to you, baby, but I do know that I love you. You walk around this town with your head all up in the sky, and I do know that I want you.
Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground. Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground. Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground. Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground.
You tease me with your love to play hard to get, but I do know that I want you. Need to do just something to get closer to your soul, but I do know that I want you.
Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground. Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground. Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground. Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground. I think he wants to dance. I think he does. Yeah, I think he wants to dance.
Hey!
Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground. Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground. Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground. Let's dance, let's shout, shout. Shake your body down to the ground.
Down, 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 down. Hey! Woo! Let me get some help. Down, 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 down. You gotta get down with it, sir.
He's gonna dance with us.
Hey! Down, 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 down. One more time, ladies and
You
gentlemen.
ready?
One more time.
You gotta move those hips.
Down, 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 down. Give it up for him, ladies and gentlemen.
A little Michael Jackson.
Give it up for him, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, Sergeant Major. Hey, Sergeant Major. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I do not remember last year General Sullivan getting on the stage and dancing with.
No, sir, he sure didn't.
You,
Let's give it up for this band. They are awesome. This is an awesome band. Now,
If you haven't seen a Lieutenant Dan Band show, these are all songs that we play in our show. Thank you for learning that. Thank you for entertaining us. You sound awesome. The Army Band, everybody, come on.
You got one more, Sergeant Major? You got one more?
Yes, sir.
Do you want one more?
If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with my family by my side.
I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the ones who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up
Next to you
and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea.
Detroit down to Houston, New York to LA. There is pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the ones who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the ones who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Ladies and gentlemen, the U.S. Army Band Downrange.
Okay, Sergeant Major, downrange, thank you very, very much, as always. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's just about it. Except, you got to be back here next year, 8 through 10 October 2018. Thank you for being here. Remember those great women and men who continue to serve. Let's join in the Army song.
March along, sing a song with the army of the free. Count the brave, count the true, who have fought to